USCHO.com.
Welcome to USCHO Edge for Friday, January 19th, 2024. I'm Ed Trefzger along with Jim Connelly and Dan Rubin. And this podcast is sponsored by the NCAA Men's Division I Frozen Four, April 11th and 13th, 2024 at XL Energy Center in St. Paul, Minnesota. Visit ncaa.com/mfrozen4 to get your tickets today. Some interesting games on the docket, and probably the most interesting one for everybody around the country is Michigan and Michigan State. It's a rivalry that has been lopsided over the last few years, but Michigan State at home at Munn Arena is the favorite. They're minus 145. Michigan is plus 114. The over-under on this one is a generous 7.
Interesting lines here. Obviously, it's been a while since Michigan State has been a favorite in this. I personally look at this one and say the home ice should factor, but does it? I mean, this is such a rivalry game. I don't know that it factors that much, and I feel like Michigan is a 114 dog. Not a lot of value. I'd love to see them closer to like 130. So that it kind of makes me not want to bet either team. 145 for Michigan State at home. No way. Over under 7. Good Lord. It's a great matchup, great rivalry, but I just don't have anything to do with this thing because the line is so skewed. I think that Michigan should have probably been a little bit more of a dog, but I mean, Dan, what do you say here? I just don't see a lot of value in anything here.
No, I don't see value. I think the numbers, the over-under is getting skewed a bit by the fact that this involves two teams that are averaging over 4 goals a game. But I think the average for both of these teams takes a bit of a hit under the numbers. I think when you look at some of the opponents that they've had, I know Michigan State scored 10 combined against a team like Canisius, and they have some. I think it was 12 last week combined against Penn State, and they have the 4-1 win over Ferris is another team that you're throwing out there that's not gonna earth shatter anything. So I'm not necessarily sold on a team averaging that number of goals when they did score 4 against Boston College, actually. So I mean, there's performances within there that they have to upkeep those numbers, but you always have to know that the numbers are going to be banked on. Michigan, I mean, they're going to be averaging over 4 goals a game, even if you last week probably drove that up half a goal in the Lindenwood series too. But I don't know. I don't see value on Michigan. I don't see value on Michigan unless the number balloons up a bit. If I were to see it, I'd even go plus 150 for where I'd probably take Michigan. I'm not sold on them to begin with for a number of reasons, which we could unpack and would. The fact of 4 of their wins right off the jumper against Lindenwood and Stonehill, that puts them under 500 and kicks them out of my top 20. So I'm not sold on them. I think the league anchors them. I don't love the value on unless it starts getting creeping up over plus 135. Over under a 7 is based on those numbers that just they have, and I don't like it. So I'm avoiding this one, I think.
And there's not a lot of teams that are still undefeated at home. Michigan State 9-0-1 at home. That goes a ton in my book to why you can't bet Michigan. And listen, if 145 minus 145 is a good number for you, take Michigan State. Try to parlay it with something else. I hate parlays, you know that, but try to find something else to make some money, but there's not a lot of money to be made here. And again, the over under, I'm not touching. That's not even a number I like.
Follow up question. If this weren't a rivalry game, if this weren't Michigan, would you parlay Michigan State in this scenario if it were Notre Dame? If it were someone other than Michigan? How much does the rivalry weigh into this for you?
Honestly, I'd probably take Michigan State if it wasn't a rivalry game. I'd probably just take them straight out. I think that it would be an easier home win. But because it is a rivalry game, because you have a team that is always hungry to play you, I actually stay away from it. I would think that Michigan State would be a more guaranteed lock. In minus 145 for a lock is a great price. I don't like this price right now because it is a rivalry game in Michigan. You just don't know who's going to show up and how hungry Michigan could be. They could honestly crush it on the road. That's a team that knows how to score goals. That's a team that knows how to play hockey. I get worried when I see a team that just wants to be hungry on the road playing their rival.
Just to throw in one other thing on the over-under, it's not just what they score, but it's what Michigan has given up. 6 goals, 7 goals, 5 goals, 4 goals a couple of times. They've been giving up a lot of goals too.
Too many for the average Michigan team. So, you got some money you want to bet for the heck of it over. Don't go under on this. Don't go under. Don't think
No.
It could be, and it could be. The reality is it could be a 2-1, 3-2 game. But I just don't think so. I mean, 7 is there for a reason. This thing could go to 9. It could go to 10 pretty quickly. I'm just not sold on that.
Yeah, you got to figure on an over under a 7 that you're looking at a 4-3 game, and it's not going to be that. I don't think it's going to be a 4-3 game. Even if you hit a 5-3 with an empty netter, you're getting there. 5-2 gets you to an over under a 7. But I mean, if this baby goes 6-5, you're looking at upwards of 11 goals. That's more than doable with these two teams if they both show up the right way.
Next, we're going to turn to a couple of games in Hockey East. On Friday, Boston College is at Merrimack. BC is minus 190, Merrimack plus 145, and the over-under on this one is 6.
Oh, I think Merrimack's getting some good credit here for being at home. You said 145. I still think this is a well-priced game too. BC's played well. They're playing well, but I like the way Merrimack's actually playing right now. And their barn is just a very tough place to play. They showed it last week against UMass after losing on the road on Friday night. They came home. This is a Merrimack team that does not beat Boston College a lot, but I do believe they've won 4 straight against BC. That's a nice little record to take into this game. All that said, I mean, BC deserves to be the heavy favorite in this game. They were the number 1 team in the country until a week ago. Merrimack is doing some good things right now. So if you have the penchant to throw a little bit of money on them, plus 145 at home, Rubin, you love the home underdog, right? So
I love home dogs.
This the situation you just die for? I'm not even going to talk about the over under a 6. It's probably going to go over that, I would say. Right? It was 6, Ed. You said, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, 6. You're going to get there. Lawler Rink does not give up a ton of goals. So that's my only issue, is that it feels. I know that the ice is probably regulation size. I don't even know what the actual. I've never taken a tape measure to it, but I assume it's around 20 by 85, 20 by 82, something like that. 195 by 82, whatever it is. I've never taken the tape measure. It feels small. Every time you walk in that building, you look at the rink, it feels tiny, as opposed to like a place like UMass, where every time you walk in, it feels really big. I feel like it's hard to score goals there. I'll leave it at that. But I don't mind Merrimack as the road dog here. I'm sorry, as the home dog here.
I love home dogs to begin with. I really like Merrimack. I like Merrimack in Hockey East. I like them kind of sitting where they are as making a brief run. I know they're not going to draw a lot of the eyeballs of a BC or a BU, and it's important to note that BU and BC have, I think, 3 of the next 4 games on the BC schedule thereabouts coming up after this. So one is, if you're BC, the other reason why I love Merrimack as a home dog is because of that you're playing a team that you hope BC will just kind of, all right, pick up your 6 points and then get ready for BU. And that's always a danger when it's Merrimack. If it were UNH, it'd be a different story for me or UMass Lowell, because those are games that I feel like BC would play well in. The part about Lawler is really interesting to me, because that building, when you say it feels small, there are buildings in general that you walk into, and they're good to take a goal off the board. And I've seen teams that walk into the cramped arenas, and they don't have to do it that often anymore. But when they do, it's a really difficult prospect and a really difficult thing to handle. You'll get guys going one way or the other where you're like, hey, this is awesome. I love the old time feel of it. I think Merrimack kind of captures that. Then you'll have the guys who walk in and say, I absolutely hate this. Merrimack's 10-10. They're 6-4-1 at home. They're 10-10-1. I like Merrimack as a home dog. I think they're going to get pummeled on Sunday, but I think Friday, I wouldn't be afraid to take them.
I will say the one thing that people need to know: Alex Jeffries, great player for Merrimack, got injured last game. He's out for at least a few weeks, so that is one thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, and it's clear that I'm picking Merrimack based on odds here. Do I think Merrimack's going to win this? Look, I don't know. I think BC could very well win this, but I like the odds on Merrimack. If you're looking at them and saying, hey, I think this could break the right way. I do hate the over under in there though. I think it's going to get there, but I just hate it.
Although I'll throw this in, BU did beat Merrimack at home 4-1. And Merrimack, of their 6 home wins, 5 of them have been out of conference, including Stonehill, Bentley, Army, St. Lawrence, and Clarkson.
Good point there. That's a really good point.
Not exactly a murderer's row.
Not a murderer's row. Yeah.
Someone's going to go to Lawler and have a bad day.
I do that. I'm going to tell you that I think that Merrimack is playing better right now than they were 2.5 months ago. They're a much better team. They're a much more complete team right now.
The other game we have in Hockey East has New Hampshire at Connecticut. And in this one, UNH is plus 124. UConn is minus 160. And the over-under in this one is an even 5.
The over-under is almost the joke here. And there was a point today, we're recording on Wednesday, where you could not actually bet the over on this game. You could only bet the under. Now they're letting you bet both. It's now minus 130 to bet the over. So you have to lay a little bit of money to bet over 5 goals. So 6 or more. These two teams play great defense. They lock it down, but they also have a lot of offensive talent. I think that and this is no disrespect to UConn, I think putting them minus 160 at home is too much. So if I had to pick somebody here, I'm going UNH, the 124 dog. I still don't love the number. The 160 just seems too extreme. I mean, UConn right now in the standings is significantly below UNH, in the pairwise especially. It just doesn't really register with me that they should be that much of a home favorite, UConn. But at the same time, UNH has been a little inconsistent the last few games. Maybe that factors in. I like the over here. I don't know if I'm crazy to say that, but in minus 130 is not a good price to bet the over. This is DraftKings numbers, don't forget. I just don't. This whole over under of 5 is just so crazy to me. This is the lowest over under we've seen this season.
7 games for UConn have hit 5 goals or less. That's the only thing that I guess I can come back to, and that's not.
I didn't need to hear that.
No, that's because as you're saying this, I looked it up and I'm like, this is going to be I'm gonna cannonball this one in there. I will say it's easy to look at the standings, right, and see that UNH is quote unquote behind UConn. But the thing you got to remember is UNH 8 games played. They've got 5 games in hand over UConn with virtually the same amount of points. So
look at the overall
it doesn't
record.
fly. Right.
The
look at the record.
9-10-2 for UConn. for UNH, you're talking about 11-6-1.
Right.
Wins over number 1 BU, with wins over Quinnipiac. I mean, this is a team that has played some very difficult opponents and won. I think this line is skewed way too much toward UConn.
Yeah, I think it's looking at the overall standings and seeing UConn 5, UNH 8, and not taking into consideration that UNH, when it comes to what they've done, they've beaten really good teams, and they just haven't played that many games. And I think this is in league play. They haven't played league games. And I think once they get going, if UNH keeps this winning percentage up, they're going to finish top 3 or 4 in the conference.
Yeah.
Now, UConn keeps this winning percentage. Well, they're already ahead, but they're going to finish on the road in the first round. They're going to drop. So there's going to be a natural drop that exists somewhere along the line for UConn, unless everybody behind them somehow manages to dump games. So I don't love the odds for UConn, and the 5 is just, look, the college hockey games aren't going over that unless apparently it involves UConn. So
the one thing I will say,
we're going under that. Sorry.
It's 3-5-0 for UNH on the road. That's the one thing that worries you. But UConn is 4-5-0 at home. They're not exactly busting down the doors at home. So
how much of that is a lift from what they did last weekend with split at home with Maine? The second game, a 2-0 win for UConn. They held a really powerful UMaine offense to just 3 shots on goal in the second period and a total of 27 in the 2-0 shutout.
And should have won both games. They had I think a 3-1 lead in the third period on Friday night and let up the last 4 goals, lost 5-3. So that's that. Maybe it was late in the second, I'm not sure, but still having a 2-goal lead on Friday, a 2-goal lead on Saturday. They're protected on Saturday. That's a big thing. They've got to get used to winning games, though. UConn, they have to finish. They have to close.
One thing. Oh, sorry, Jamie. One thing I was going to say. One thing I just want to kick in here too is I would love to do the breakdown and of the fact that game last week, the 2-0 win and even the 5-3 loss happened at the XL Center and not in stores. So I'd be interested to see how the offense and how some of the numbers break out when they go back to campus and see if the ice sheet's different. Those are all things that you can do to game an edge in there if you're into it.
Well, let's take a break and we'll come back with a couple of great matchups in the NCHC. This podcast is sponsored by the NCAA Men's Division I Frozen Four, April 11th and 13th at XL Energy Center in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Where are my hockey fans at? Present! Welcome to Fandom 101. It's NCAA Ice Hockey Championship time, when the hottest teams in the country face off under one roof. Be there to see your squad hoist the ultimate trophy overhead. The NCAA Men's Frozen Four, April 11th and 13th in St. Paul, Minnesota. Attendance is encouraged. Passion is mandatory. Buy your seats today at ncaa.com/mfrozen4. Class dismissed.
Back with USCHO Edge, Denver and Omaha. This is a fun one. The numbers on this one, Denver is a -200. Omaha is a +154. And the over-under in this one is a whopping 7.
In this game, we should point out, is in Omaha, correct?
Correct.
I think if this game was in Denver, we could see a -310. And I'm not sure if that's correct. Omaha has played some good hockey since the break. Denver, though, listen, I expected them to have maybe some faults here and there. They've played great. There's been very little let up for this Denver team. Even against St. Cloud last week, I feel like they played really good hockey. That's a really difficult St. Cloud team they played at home. I like Denver. I would not touch -200. There's no value there. Omaha, might they pull one out? Maybe. The over-under of 7 is interesting. I'm almost leaning under on this one, believe it or not. Again, I think we talked about this last week where I feel like the overinflated line on the over-under with Denver is just artificial at this point. Will they score a lot of goals? Yes, they will. Will they score 6 goals a game every game? No. Uh, they're in the 5.25 or something like that right now. I think that Denver probably wins this game, but I see 4-2s. I see 4-1s. I don't see a lot of 6-3s, 5-4s, 5-2s. Well, you'd need 6-2 to get over that. I don't love betting the over here. I feel like you'll push a lot, maybe, but I don't love the value of this bet.
You'd need to hit the average to go over. You'd need to hit your average goals per game on both teams, and that's not taking into account how well they might play or poorly play against a team that you're playing up or playing down, right? Because Omaha would be considered playing, quote, down based on pairwise numbers for Denver. Denver would be playing up for Omaha. So you're hoping then that the numbers don't skew away from the average, which is really hard to determine if that would happen. And I just don't like that. I don't trust that the game is going to go over 7. I think Denver is going to get goals. Whether or not it's enough and whether or not Omaha matches it is the next question, which is the hardest part. And I'm not sure that Denver by itself is going to get over the hump. And look, this would be a game where if you could live bet, I'd love to live bet it, wait for the over-under to maybe crash down if they're not scoring early and then take it, or take an alternative line if you can. Like, this is one of those that if you don't get 2 goals in the first period, you're not getting there with these two teams. I just don't see it. And when I say 2 goals, a 1-1 game kind of works in that regard. The one thing that I will kind of throw out there about Denver in terms of the money line is Denver, despite all of their positives, even when I was looking back, and I think they've played some incredible hockey, I see only one real gap. And that's that heading into break and coming out of break, they wound up in the shootout against St. Cloud and should have lost that game. I mean, they had to score 2 to push it to overtime. The Western Michigan game, they should have won that game and then gave up a goal, wound up winning it in overtime. I see games in here, even the Omaha game. It was a 2-2 game, and they wound up losing that one 4-3. That was the continuation of the game that was suspended, and then they restarted it. I see some gaps where Denver could lose this game. And I know it's easy to say that about anybody, but I like value on Omaha. I think Omaha could. I'm not even going from the home dog situation. I'm just saying I just like value on Omaha right now on this one.
Yeah, I can't agree there. I just don't see Omaha, and it's no offense to Omaha. I just don't see Denver collapsing. They need to collapse. They need to not play well on that first night. I think they'll come out a house of fire. I think this might be my lock of the week when I really look at it. It's not a good price, -200, but I feel like Denver should win that game. Again, I don't see it going 5-3. I see it going more 3-1, 4-1. But I do see Denver locking down in this one.
Something happens to Denver on Friday, I think Omaha is going to get absolutely just pummeled, stomped in the second game. Like, I think an angry Denver team is not what they're going to want in Nebraska.
If Denver loses 3-2, they're going to win 7-1 on the back end.
Yeah, they're going to come out real mad in the second game. So I apologize. I love Omaha, but if you win that Friday game, Saturday could be bet the over in Denver.
Well, if Michigan and Michigan State is the premier matchup of the weekend, right behind it is North Dakota at St. Cloud State. The Fighting Hawks are -125. The Huskies are -105, and the over-under is 6.
So a pick 'em, basically, is what we're saying. We're taking negative money on both teams. I don't know where to go with this. I feel like North Dakota has played better of late. They had that crazy stretch of 3 straight or 4 straight overtime losses. Well, one was an exhibition game, but 3 straight 3-2 overtime losses. Then they come back and sweep Alaska. Then they lose again in overtime to Omaha, and then they beat Omaha 3-1 last Saturday. Where are we with this North Dakota team? I'm not sure. St. Cloud State, I feel like they're playing fine hockey right now, despite the fact that they maybe didn't get the results they wanted last weekend. I still feel like I have no worries about this St. Cloud State team. I do think that the over under of 6 is a great number. I see this one going over. Maybe not a lot of people do. I see this one going over. I don't think I'd want to have to lay my money on it, but I would still say this feels like one that's going to go over. Even in losses, St. Cloud State is in the 5-6 range. So wins seem to be above that, 7-7. They've had some 2s and 5s, but 6 is kind of a number that's going to push a lot of the time. They're going to win a lot of games with a ton of goals. St. Cloud State. I just like them here. I like St. Cloud State. I like the over here.
Yeah, I like the over too. And I like St. Cloud State too in this one. And for me, it's a matter of the fact that teams for the over line up very similarly with the amount of goals they score per game. And when they're winning games, they're remarkably consistent. So both these teams, even when they're not winning games, they're consistent. Like I don't think a lot of these teams when you get into the NCHC are going to give up goals against each other to the degree that you're going to have an 8 or a 9 that's a blowout like that. Not in the second half. Even Omaha, North Dakota got to 9 last week, and that was a 1-goal game. So I find that you're gonna hit your number, but you're gonna hit your number based on a 1-goal game, and to me I don't feel confident in taking the over, but I think that it's gonna get there. The part about St. Cloud State is that North Dakota, despite being an interesting team in the sense that I would have had them near the top of the pairwise at this point. I think they would have been kind of in that position of ranked 3rd or 4th in the country, where we'll find Michigan State or Wisconsin over the next couple of weeks. And with Maine, when my poll was Maine was there for a little while, that aren't basically BU-BC. For me, the issue that comes up with North Dakota is that they just haven't gotten to that point for me. And when I look at some of the teams that are out there, since they haven't gotten to that point and they're hovering in that 7, 8, 6 pairwise range, that means that you're good, but you could lose a game. And to me, when you're playing, and they haven't played a lot on the road. So going to St. Cloud for a Friday night game, I think this weekend is a split. And I think there's some shock value in going to St. Cloud. So on value, I like St. Cloud here.
I think I think the better word for North Dakota really is just they're not consistent. They have done nothing consistently. They're a good team, and we know they're a good team. We've seen some great wins out of them, and they can put them together in spans, but they've also put together losses in spans here. And that's what kind of stands out to me. When they show me the consistency, that's when I can't get away from North Dakota. I think this could be a top 3, maybe a top 5 team in the country. Right now, they're just not there for me.
I kind of felt like they were surprising me and were going to be there before they had the 2 home losses in overtime to Colorado College. Dan mentioned home and road. They've had 16 home games and only 6 away games so far this season, which is part of the depression in the pairwise because you get 0.8 for those home wins. So,
right.
If they go on the road and do some stuff, great. But maybe we're seeing North Dakota averaging out to where I thought they would be.
And maybe in the second half, put some road wins together. Then you become that elite team. That's when you move into the top 8 of the pairwise where you get a second seed. They should be there. I think they're that good of a team. They just haven't shown it enough. Again, consistency to me is kind of screaming out right now.
One last point about St. Cloud to throw in there is that I don't want to call this must win, but when you're sitting down 12-13 in the pairwise, 14 in the pairwise, whatever it is, you almost need to win because there's going to be, look, we established number of weeks ago. Ed and I did it. Jimmy, I know you've talked about it. We've talked about it here. Good teams are going to be left out this year because of the way the pairwise breaks with auto bids and if the wrong team, quote, gets in. So if you're St. Cloud, I don't think you can lose ground based on the math, but wins this weekend would go a long way to helping fix the palpitations that might exist later in the year.
In a position like they're at, if you split on the road and get 4, 5, or 6 points a weekend at home, you're going to climb both in the standings and in the pairwise. And that's what you got to do right now.
Yes.
I agree 100% with that. That is what the NCHC, that is what Hockey East is about right now.
And I'm sure that message has been made clear by both Brett Larson and Brad Berry. Some great games to look at this weekend. And that'll wrap up this edition of USCHO Edge. This podcast is sponsored by the NCAA Men's Division I Frozen Four, April 11th and 13th, 2024 at XL Energy Center in St. Paul, Minnesota. Visit ncaa.com/mfrozen4 to get your tickets today. For Jim Connelly, for Dan Rubin, I'm Ed Trefzger, and this has been USCHO Edge.